Anyone hoping that the loss of 90 lives at sea might compel the nation's politicians to strike a deal on asylum seekers is set for disappointment. MPs from all sides are keen for a cross-party solution, but it's just not happening at the leadership levels. And with only 2 days left before Parliament rises for the long winter break, it doesn't look hopeful. There was agreement on an entirely different matter today, though. The opposition leader Tony Abbott and the mining billionaire Clive Palmer both admitted to a stand-up row in a Melbourne hotel last week. Mr Palmer will join me shortly, but first this report from political editor Chris Yorman.
Everyone is talking.
Put politics to one side.
I think the Prime Minister is playing politics.
There is one side of politics which wants a solution.
This government has failed to put in place property tariffs.
We have to be showing leadership in the region.
If you want to stop the boats, you've got to stop the games.
I refer the Prime Minister to...
But few are listening.
We will ensure that...
What is there to negotiate? The Prime Minister just wants us to accept a dud deal.
5 days on from the sinking of an asylum seeker boat that claimed 90 lives, politics as usual has returned, and that means a bitter deadlock.
You're left thinking that he sees political advantage in people dying. That's the real disgrace of this.
Well, it's wrong, absolutely wrong, and frankly, I think that the member in question should be a bit bigger than that kind of thing.
The Prime Minister says she's prepared to compromise as long as the final deal includes offshore processing in Malaysia.
I am willing to talk, and the government is willing to talk to see if we can find a compromise that enables this Parliament to realise what I think is supported by all of us, and that is that we see an end to this human misery and loss of life.
The Coalition's prepared to look at the government's legislation and then strike out the Malaysian solution.
I do want to assure the Prime Minister, the Parliament and the Australian people that the opposition is prepared to accept the government's legislation if the government is prepared to accept our amendment. That's our position today.
The Leader of the Opposition will resume his seat.
The Greens want a multi-party committee to forge a consensus, but they won't listen to anyone who wants offshore processing.
This committee, addressing asylum seekers, would have to operate within the context of international law and the Refugee Convention.
This impasse is causing enormous frustration among some parliamentarians, and there'll be another meeting of independents and other party backbenchers tomorrow, but it will probably come to little.
In years to come, consciences will be well and truly scarred when people reflect on the fact that at this point where we were all called as parliamentarians to do the right thing, that there were those that were prepared to play politics with this issue.
Politics is played hard between the major parties, but it sometimes pales beside the internal brawls. Last night, 7:30 revealed that Tony Abbott and mining billionaire Clive Palmer had locked horns in a Melbourne hotel room 5 days ago.
Well, I don't think I was the first person to raise my voice, but I may have been the last person.
The fight was over Clive Palmer's determination to move that this weekend's Liberal Federal Council meeting endorse a motion that registered lobbyists be barred from being senior office bearers in the party. That would strike out 2 sitting vice presidents, former Howard government ministers Alexander Downer and Santo Santoro.
I think that the federal executive of the Liberal Party should be open to people from all walks of life.
Today, Tony Abbott seemed keen to deflate Clive Palmer.
No member of our party has a privileged status by virtue of his wealth or his donation.
This fight strikes some cynics in both major parties as a little too convenient, given this consistent line of attack from the government.
Those opposite will kneel at the feet of vested interests like Clive Palmer and Gina Reinhardt, Mr Speaker.
But there's no doubt the opposition leader is lukewarm on Clive Palmer's whimsy that he might seek pre-selection from the Liberal National Party to take on the Treasurer in the Queensland seat of Lilly.
And it doesn't matter how big your bank account is, doesn't matter how big your donations have been, you've got to go through the ordinary pre-selection panel, and then you've got to be a good grassroots local candidate, and then you've got to support the party's policies.
So fight, fact or fancy? It's always a little hard to tell with Clive Palmer, but if he is serious about a career in Canberra, perhaps he should be mindful of an old adage: if you want a friend in politics, buy a dog.